Bonjour. I'll do an introduction in English. That's okay. So we're proud today to have Alan Dix with us. So Alan is director of the Computational Foundry at Swansea University, also professorial fellow at Cardiff Metropolitan University. I like to think of Alan as a sort of polymath of HCI. He's touched everything, and that's reflected in being one of the author of one of the first textbooks in HCI, but more recently is published books on statistics for HCI, another one called Touch It on design in the physical digital world, and then the second edition of a book on AI centered on the human, as I understand it. Alan has been elected in the Sakai Academy over a decade ago, and is a fellow of the Learned Society of Wales. One thing that sets Alan really apart from most of us is that he spent 10 years living on a small island in Scotland, and not only that, but he walked all around Wales, 1,000 miles, walked. Not biked, not trained, or nothing, walked, and has a lot of story to tell about this project, which was, partly a research project, and maybe some of it will creep into your talk today. Yeah, Alan's done a lot of things over the years. I think it's better to use the time we have together to give him the floor and to welcome you and listen to you. Thank you.
Also very clumsy, so I have to put things carefully so I don't throw them away. Okay, yeah, so that's, in fact, I think you've probably done about the first 3 slides for my thing already for me. I was double checking, I got that up already, and I will, over the next few days, I will make sure I upload the slides to SlideShare, and then they'll go there. I'm not very efficient at a lot of things, but I am quite good at keeping that to date, the web bits up to date. Although, bit of archaeology here. If you look at my webpage, if you go to the top level, alandix.com, it's WordPressy. You go to the next level, the academic level, and the middle column of that, and is it still with tables? It probably still is. I can't remember if I've done that. But the middle column is my 1996 webpage. And if you go down, or even 5, it was earlier than that, 5, yeah, you'll find things that were added, and it's effectively like a Facebook feed. And you'll find things I put in there. And then at some point, I took that webpage and put it into the central column. And even, of course, the webpage itself, the one that's columnated, is pretty dated. But it's a bit nice web archaeology there, just in that page. So I'm not necessarily good at sort of doing the maintenance is harder than adding. Adding is easy. As a book writer, adding the new stuff is easy. Updating old stuff. Okay. Yeah, so as I said, I'm from Wales. Yeah, I work, I certainly moment to go back to change some things, but I'm working partly at Swansea University and partly at Cardiff, which is where I was born as well. So, I'll try not to break into Welsh in the middle, because I think, my English can be a little bit garbled at times, so I apologise for that. But my Welsh, I assume, will be even lesser, unless there's any Breton speakers here. No, okay, no, because we could probably converse. But okay, and there's a lot of things I'm not talking about today. I popped that up. I did once talk through this slide and spent an hour doing it, so I won't do that today. I won't talk about slow time because that always takes too long. I would just actually, there's some stuff these two actually connect. Where is Camille? There are things that, I gave 2 alternatives. There was other things I could talk about, but one of this stuff I've been interested in recently on numbers, and well, actually recently goes back 20 years or a bit, really. But I really feel that, so sometime or other we should re-talk about this, but probably not in this visit. But anyway, lots of different things when I was on the island, and also connects bits of walking, but also now work with community heritage stuff. And in spare time, when I have them, I do things like do computational modelling of regret, because why wouldn't you? And yeah, and the emergence of self and things like that. But that's spare time stuff. You've already mentioned it all, I think, actually, apart from the lab stage. But yeah, so I think the textbook's well known. Touch IT came out about a year and a bit ago, but it was a bit quiet because it was when people were still in the COVID recovery stage. And so I need to do something to let people know more about that. And the stats book and the AI, that's the first edition of it, the AI one just about to come out. But also, which I haven't really done a lot of work on for about a year and a half in terms of the structure of it, but I have a labs page with things that you can play with. And it's not got everything, but I think the things I show you today, you can play with. Yeah, both the things I hope I'll do some demo things. Oh, I haven't tried those out. Yeah, we'll see what happens. But so really it's sort of between these. So I'm thinking it's a bit about physicality, a bit about UX tools, and some of the things I'll show hopefully will be from that labs page, which I should have prepared beforehand. So yes, as I mentioned, TED is quite central to what I'll talk about today, which itself is a very long-term project. And so TED is about sort of books published about 2 years ago now. Yeah, myself, Steve Gill, who's a product designer, and Joe and Davina, who sort of worked with us for periods on digital. The fact that things have a physical form as well as a digital presence. The two are linked. The fact that we're in this room changes the nature of it. So if I'm looking at this sitting in my bed, it's different from looking at it now with you, talking to you. The fact, actually, it's very important that I hold it in my left hand because my right finger is the only one I've got as an unlock. Now you know which one to chop off. Right? Yeah. So our bodies are also part of that. So we just actually the book's in 4 parts, and I'll just start because the thing. So there's the things about the physicality, affordances, that kind of thing of the device, about the body physiology. And I said, is this really important? So one of the examples I often give for that is if you think about social media, you might have, and might be within the same platform or on the same screen, you might be talking to a friend who's just had a major breakup, or perhaps had somebody died, a friend has died, or something like that. Another one's about to get married or some other celebration. If you're meeting those physically, you would be taking time. The electrical bits in your brain can probably shift pretty rapidly. I mean, even then, probably not that rapidly, to be honest, but they are quite good at shifting rapidly. But the body chemistry, all those hormones and all those sort of things that are shifting around because of that interaction do not shift as rapidly. They take time. There is no way you can change those things. Those things interact. So the body physiology, even when you're not thinking about physically holding stuff, is intimately tied to that interactive experience. Yeah, and there's so many more examples. I said lots of physical body examples, things like that, really important. The space, I was talking over lunch, I was talking about my tendency when I sit it down to always sit with my back to a wall and actually often facing the entrance. And that is a known power position. And this caused real problems in some of the early things where people had sort of interactive boardroomy settings, because often it changed the power dynamics of the room and things, all sorts of things go on. And I always struggle still to, my real preference is actually to stand, as well as that being there, that fall off the back here, is to stand this way. And I think it's to do with right visual field connecting to left part of brain, I'm guessing. And left, then, but maybe not. But this always feels more comfortable. However, if there's a door there, I mean, here obviously I have to stand here, but there's a door there. Spatial arrangements matter. So that's more about, again, the psychology of it, but also physicality. Can I press 2 buttons at the same time? In the nuclear control room, not nuclear, but the bunkers with the missiles, you deliberately have buttons that cannot be pressed by one person because people's arms aren't that long. And you design understanding both the body physiology and the spatial arrangement. And then, the digitalis itself, this is not, and I think we realize this is not, digital does not mean non-physical. Yeah, and who's now, I've forgotten who's doing the sustainability. Was that you? No, you, sorry, got on the wrong, you were close to each other. You were behind. So, there are electrons going down wires that are burning up the atmosphere. There are sensors heating things up. You know, there is physical space, and separation matters. You know, I've got a coaster which is a bit of a circuit board, and you can see the lines wiggle, and they wiggle to make them the same length as each other, so that the signals, because the speed they're going means you can end up with several bits in the wire at the same time, even at that scale, so that signals end up synchronized at the other end. No, there's a physicality to the digital world and the way they link to each other. So lots of AR stuff around here. We are having AR stuff this morning, also around that sort of area. So anyway, those things in the book. So let's talk a little bit about social interactions. And well, actually, you'll get onto the title later. I was just realizing I sort of should have done one of those things that vaguely explains why it's related to the title, but anyway, never mind. So one thing this work did, oh crumbs, probably 15 years back actually, on the formal modeling of digital systems. You know this from the book thing. So basically looking at something like a light switch and saying, what happens if you take that light switch and you tear it off the wall and cut its wires? What happens when the battery is run down on this? Right? And just look at it and say, what are the interaction possibilities of it? So here, I mean, you can still do all the physical stroking bit actually, but I mean, it doesn't matter which side I stroke on this. There are 3 buttons on the edge of this I can press. Imagine giving it to a baby with the battery off. What things you could play with? So, and there are some things actually, in terms of orientation, there's obviously, you've always got those things. So for light switch though, it has, so I'll leave it on the wall actually, so it doesn't get missing, but I'll just cut its wires, right? You know, I can play with that. I can press it down, press it up, and I can look at it, depending on the light switch. There's different kinds of light switch, but sort of clicky up, down kind. I can actually see, I don't know what they do, but I can see it's got 2 states. I can change them and I can know which one it's in. So it's got quite, you know, there's quite a lot of behavior you can talk about in that. And so we can model it in like with the state transition-y type stuff. So feelable and feelable, also very important. If you reach out in the night, you can tell where that button is and you can know what to do with it. You don't know what it does, you know what to do with it. So that is, we could call these physograms. And yes, the device unplugged. Pull the plug out. What's left? What can you play with? But of course, it's to do something like turn the light on and off. Now, lights are particularly match this very simply. 2 states usually, not necessarily. Sometimes you've got variable lights, but it's simple lights on and off. And in the case of the light switch, a very simple one-to-one mapping. So that's a really easy world stuff, you know. But actually, when you can do that, it's great. So who's got an outside light? Anybody's got a light outside their house? But a lot of them are automatic, but so it's yours an automatic one? Or is it? No, so it's just a manual one, you switch on and off. There, you know, unless you can look at windows, actually knowing the fact that you can tell from the switch is quite important, you know. You know, again, this interesting, especially, you know, if you've done the one with neon lights where you turn the switch on and you think, oh, I got the wrong light, you turn it on, you try another one. And it's only when you get to the end, you try doing it. And, yes, and it comes on, yeah. So when these work, of course, the life is not that simple, you know, normally can. So you get much more complicated ones. I'm not going to talk about many, but you get things that are, I mean, you get more complicated things where you control them. You also get things like knobs that turn themselves as well, which is sort of more complicated. Actually, I love old washing machines, right? Particularly the electromechanical ones rather than digital ones, because that knob really does control the machine. And when it moves, it does the same thing as happens when you move it, which means people can build up an expertise by observing the machine working, just like looking over somebody's shoulder. Now, there are physical things going on. If you turn it backwards, the machine, the clothes don't unwash. I mean, but people are reasonably clever, so it's worth remembering people are not stupid. It's easy to think with you. Yeah, I mean, I know it's a thing, but as user interface people, we sometimes do believe that everybody's stupid, and they're not. You know, they actually, you know, I mean, I don't. Sorry, I'm being a bit flippant, but there's a sense in which we assume people are, you know, and people can be really clever, and sometimes, you know, designing things to really exploit their cleverness. And I'm sure you'd never just. But yeah, we do use that thing. You know, oh yeah, we've got to make it so easy. You know, sometimes actually deal with complexity. But here it is complex, but people can really learn from that. And similarly, the kettle, the fact that a lot of kettles, you flick them down. If you want to turn them off, you flick them up. When it's boiled, it flicks up. How many toasters don't do that anymore? They all used to, didn't they? And how often do you see someone, and even when you know your toaster, you still try and pull it up? You know, when the smoke comes out, you know, and there's the button to press, and you know it. And perhaps that's just me, perhaps I've learned. Anybody else do that? Yeah, okay, thank you. You know, it's a natural reaction. So there's a lot of things we do in the physical world which have very natural reactions. So I really love controlled state, and you can model controlled state. I won't, so go on. So you can do these sort of models, and I'm going to skip all those. So it's interesting. So when we're doing this stuff, still going to do it. I said I don't want to go, but bounce back buttons. I hate them. You know, the kind that. But well, no, they're really useful when you. Yeah, there are reasons why you want bounce back as well. I'm not going to. I don't really want to. We'll see why I mentioned this later. But I think what's really great was when we gave these things to designers, we actually gave them the formal methods paper. So that's a real challenge. Anybody who does formal methods here? Anybody? Dear Lil, don't you? Yeah, write your paper for Formal Methods workshop and give it to designers. See what happened. Anyway, we did this. We gave, I mean, there were people we were working with, but hadn't been involved in the details of this. And this was one thing they did, was 3 controls. It's supposed to be like for a media device. So this is going back a few years again, you know. So this is where the screen would have been. So think more like the early iPods, that kind of thing. There was one with a sort of twisty thing where your fingers went round on something with no affordances whatsoever. There's a knob. Actually, that wasn't clicking. That was just, I think, vaguely feel. That's right, vaguely feel that one. And this one, you could also, it was a flat knob, sort of like an old gas cooker type thing. So you could see where it was. And then they modelled the 3 of them. And the models were sort of different. So these 2 looked fairly similar because. And this one really, there's a bit of something. They actually knew there were exactly 6 states as well. But so they used a little bit of secret knowledge here. So it wasn't just what the physical thing was, because actually they modeled that one at the bottom. They would have had nothing. Apart from it, click down, actually, that's right, a selection. So it would have actually just been click up, click down. But they sort of knew, but there was nothing tangible in there at all. And they tried to do that by just drawing lines through. So they sort of extended the notation effectively. And the others, if you look in detail, which may or may not be, no, it's not. There are slight differences between these. But the other thing that's really brilliant, and those of you who've been around a bit, do you know, you mentioned the cognitive dimensions, Green's work and things like that, and secondary notation. In a state transition network, where you draw those little balls doesn't matter to the formal properties. So what did they do? They drew them in circles that matched the movement of the hand. You know, that wasn't part of the formal properties of it, but it's part of things you could do whilst retaining its formalism. And they drew extra little circles around these things, and they sort of gave them the sense of the fact that you could be in that position and push down or not. And really, really lovely. Anyway, little story about that. We'll come back to some physicograms later. So move on 15 years or something like that. COVID. Have you all blotted COVID out? Interesting enough, I notice nobody in here is wearing a mask today, but you know, it's really, I know it's such a serious stuff, but there are a serious number of people who COVID has not stopped for, either because they've got long COVID, that came up this morning, session this morning, or because they are not vaccinated, because they can't. No, there's the people who choose not to, that's a different thing, but people who are not able to take a vaccination. But also the thing that COVID should have reminded us and hasn't, and I felt so awkward. I was on a plane going to Belfast. I had a bad cold. It wasn't COVID, but it doesn't matter. It's a bad cold. I did wear on the plane a mask. I felt so awkward doing it. But that cold could kill an elderly person. And it's so easy to, you would hope, we learned we could change the world in COVID, and we've forgotten it equally quickly. So anyway, sorry, that's nothing to do with any of this. In the midst of COVID, been working with, and there's something else I should have mentioned too as well, never mind. Anyway, Adrian and Anna, and so this, first of all, we've been working on HCI video, teaching in video, that we'd had a couple of workshops about teaching in video before, and then realized this was really important. So ran some online ones for sharing, people for sharing their experiences. During one of those, and this is, was this Anne? I don't remember, it was Anne or Adriana who did this, write up while doing it anyway. But one of the things that came up from that was somebody saying, when they're doing physical designs, what they would usually do, and this was with sort of master students or undergraduates and doing things, they would sort of hand them around to each other. And although they could do at home, they would be able to do that, they couldn't do that. So a challenge I had was how, thinking about that. So built a little prototype, and I'll at this point attempt to eeny, meeny, miny, mo. If I go through Safari, because that's not got anything else on it. I'm going to have to interact interestingly here, because I should have set these up. Okay, into labs. There we are. So there's the actual link. So one weekend actually made up a little so backstory. There's no fixed video, there's no fixed images on this, so so nothing happens if you see the videos. This is a prototype for prototyping. The brief I won't play, but Rockall. Does anyone know where Rockall is? No. So it's this island about halfway between, and actually push into the Atlantic, about halfway between Iceland and the UK, which is owned by the UK, which is really important because that gives you fishing rights and stuff. But Rockall has just had independence. Yay! All the seabirds who live on there are now independent. Nobody lives on Rockall. It's only about, perhaps 100 meters across or something like that. But so the Rockall Fishery Defence Force wants to actually make sure that people don't go and fish there illegally. But there aren't many, because the population is low. These are semi-autonomous vehicles with a controller. So we have the control. And so the controller is made out of, the mock-up is corrugated cardboard, stick together with double-sided sticky, and pins and things like that, which actually, if you try and play with it, falls to pieces very rapidly. So actually, even in a studio, would not be that brilliant to play with. All right, but it's very rapid. It was a sort of few hours in an afternoon popping it together. So the idea is, I said, I'll skip the bit. There's a brief. You can play a video of the brief. You can play a video of the demoing the routes. I won't show those, but what I'll do is. So the device, as I said, unfortunately, so this is a program project. There should be a still video, but there is nothing until the video runs. So you'll see it in a moment. But there's a little hatch, and it's got a hatch on it. You'll see it in a moment. There's a little hatch at the bottom, like a fishing hatch. There's a little flag at the bottom which says full steam ahead and full steam and off, and it's the power. And there's a little wheel at the top, which is a spring back wheel, and the little video shows it spring back. You'll see this in a moment. So it starts off, with the hatch closed, the flag at stop, and the wheel in the center position. And I've got a number of things I can do. I can turn the wheel. So underneath it, it's got one of those physicgrams. Expressed in a slightly different way, the state transition network, basically it's a physigram underneath. It's a model of the physical behavior of that little device. I can move the flag in steam, or I can open the hatch. So let's get the mouse onto the right place. Let's turn the wheel to the left. And hopefully, unless it's coming below, oh, it's coming below size. And the sound's not coming off because, oh, okay. This. Anyway, sorry. You would. I was realizing we can't. There's no way we can get this to work. But if you did that, then we would get feedback.
Not if I mute myself.
Yeah, you can.
Oh, if you mute both of those, and I unmute. Mute and no, we are getting feedback. Can you turn your volume off as well? Okay, so it's an experiment in computer sound, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, so let's try again. So I'll do the next thing. So now the wheel's left, I can now I can't turn the wheel, but I can let it go. Or what I'm going to do is I'll do move flag to full steam and do that one. Or maybe let's just open the hatch. Let's open the hatch and see what happens. So I'll open the hatch and wait a bit. Come on. Is the network that slow here? Or is it my... yeah, that one appeared there. Unless, oh, perhaps mine's fighting more for the Wi-Fi now. Oh, okay, this isn't going to work, is it? Oh, it did it. It thinks it's done it because, no, the open hatch. So this, is it just that I didn't press it properly? Ah, lift flap. So you can see, I won't press the button because as it says, no return. So as you can see, you can play. So for a moment, so yes, remote is fine. Actually, we're fine for the moment, as long as you can hear me out there. I was just realizing that's fine. So what you can do is you can play with the device remotely. And what it is, I just did a video, made sure it included all of the actions from all of the states. There's a little Google, as I often do, is a Google Doc descriptor file, which describes the clips. They're stored on Vimeo, says it starts at this point, ends at this point, and associates them with transitions. Can also connect it into the physical system, which is also a model boat that my dad made for me when I was little. So it has a whole story to it, but that's for another day. So what I'll do is I'll click, and now it's going to, there's also connection into the real semi-autonomous boat, which is my wooden boat from when we'll see it here. And so what I think I'll do is it's already on left, and move flag to full steam, and we'll see what happens. So, oh, turn flag to full steam. You notice it's good sound effects here. I know this is the effect on the real system. All left rudder. If only they'd had this on Titanic. But anyway, you get the idea. So the idea of this is you can experiment with things. You can give physical things to somebody at a distance, or that would fall to pieces. As is probably, it just happens the other thing. If you want, you can play with this yourself and see what happens. You press the red button when it's connected system. But I'll leave that to you to play with. Is this sound working okay, actually? Am I speaking loud enough to the back? Because you'd be suffering. Remote is fine anyway. Just going to try and find my mouse again. Pardon? Sound is going weaker. Okay, so should we switch back and then, yeah. So I need to turn. Okay, back to that. So yeah, so I can flick through these now. I really should get those stills in as well, shouldn't I? and blah, blah, blah. And that was if I couldn't do things. And yeah, this is what the Google Doc looks like that describes it. And it's basically a physigram, but described in a different way. Another issue, I was just realizing I've not been keeping any idea of time. Oh, that's not bad. Is to do with, oh, it says this, it's to do with context. So think of this, it's not really, and it's not just about this, but think particularly about that sort of spatial arrangement and the fact that people are around, that things have context. One thing that I have struggled with for years, and I'm sure you're the same, it probably says this on the next slide. How many times, you know, I work with students, I'd say, you know, do some sort of brief, they'd either choose something themselves or whatever. And what to do is they draw little screenshots. Right. And I remember one of them was somebody doing, which interestingly enough, Miriam, who I work with, has an example of just one of these, but many years before, in fact, talked about this pull-out newspaper. And they have this pull-out newspaper, and it was sort of, I think it was the idea was come in a bit like you know, like a roll-down scroll thing like that, and pull out like a scroll, and you'd read it, and there'd be a button you'd press, and it'd flip pages, and then when you finished, you closed it up, and you put it away, and then next time you opened it, I think it didn't even remember your page. It explicitly said it, went back to the beginning. I remember that now. Because I think they thought it was like closing the newspaper. That's right. And I said, so I'm sitting on my armchair, and I reach for my cup of tea. And as soon as you thought about it in a context, it was clear there was some fundamental problems. But they just hadn't do. So, you know, always draw a sketch of where something's going to be, you know, no matter what your skills are, or act it out, actually. It's another thing that's really, really powerful. I remember doing this actually with, trying to think if I've got anything in my pockets that will do. Let's take this out, so I'll roll this up. Pretend this is a Swiss Army knife. I remember sort of as a demo, sort of we were talking about potential nearish future things you could do in a sort of IoT-ish world. And so we think about the internet-enabled Swiss Army knife. Because actually, marketing-wise, who's going to buy that? Swiss Army knife buyers, yeah, are just the sort of people who are going to like gadgets, aren't they? And Swiss Army knives always have a toothpick, don't they? Right. Perfect for, you know, a screenwriter thing, yeah, because well, nobody uses it to pick their teeth. They're really good for really, you know, cable ties. And if you're a bit mean and you like to reuse them, anybody who admits to being mean and reusing cable ties rather than cutting them, right? You get your toothpick, you slip it in the sort of wrong side of the cable tie, it opens the thing. And it's exactly the right size for doing that. Swiss Army knives want to share all their bright ideas, right? So you have the internet-enabled one, and it's like, you know, it says, you know, you've got, oh yeah, very small. You know, you can select people that maybe we type them up onto a website separately, but you can see, oh, and you want to do this, you open the thing for horses' hooves that nobody knows what to do with, right? Or the sort of orly thing, you go and do this. And I started to act it out. And as I started to act it out, I suddenly realized my finger was over the screen. It was only when I acted out. So sometimes you really have to physically act out, but certainly try to get people to sketch, to draw. So yeah, context really, really, really matters. So just to complete context. Actually, that's on Tiree. That's a bit of Tiree. That was a project we did with Heritage, I think, where we were, and that's a tourist map of the islands that you could do GPS movements on the tourist map, which was not like a standard Cartesian map. It was actually draw a map for things, but we did the mapping so you could do it as well. So you could actually do your GPS on that, and as well as using a Northern Survey map, so things. But anyway, this is actually projected on a projected table in the rural centre on Tiree. You know, context really, really matters. So, you know, how do we get this idea? How do we help people to sort of sketch things and stuff like that? So that was one of the drivers, and there was multiple ones. I'll come to that thing. For so myself, Anna Carter, and Miriam Sturdy got together and sort of started to think about, you know, what tools would help people to do the things we know the right sort of thing. And there's two sides to this. So one is, what are the new tools that would help people do the old things better? And what are the tools that would help people do the new things at all? You know, so as I'll explain, actually, it's on the next slide, so I'm realizing if I don't jump ahead. So Anna Carter was working during COVID on an installation in the city centre of Swansea, where they were doing major reconstruction work. And the council were funding this in order to be able to help people visualize what this construction site was going to be like. Except it was in the middle of COVID, so the original idea was a sort of ARE thing that you did that to. That did not work during COVID. Yeah, actually, you know, the idea of sticking your nose up to other people's noses, maybe at any time isn't the most brilliant idea, but particularly during COVID. So they had to design something that was a bit more standoff, was done with elbows and knees, also worked with a wheelchair and small children and stuff. And so this is some of her early sketches. The device, and here's a very physical device in context, drawn in the context. This is the real one. This looks like a cutaway. I still can't quite work this out, whether they doctored this photograph. I think it's just something to do with the fact that the distances of the camera.
No, the edges are too.
They're too sharp. That's right. It doesn't. Something looks wrong about it. It is possible they post, but the shadow is dead right from here.
Middleton, you know.
Well, exactly. And but it might actually be, you know, it could be one of those things where again, this probably was still being taken during COVID lockdowns, that it was actually taken from a distance and zoomed in, and that will create odd effects. So I'm not quite sure. That would also explain why it's all sharp. I mean, it's quite likely that one. I mean, you can see this is a bit distortion to it. It feels a bit funny. But anyway, I don't quite know. But anyway, that is I think the head of the Swansea Council or something like that. This thing, and there was a lower version, a higher version. That's AstroTurf, by the way, because if you're in a wheelchair, grass is not a good idea. And it worked for quite a long time. And once the building was finished, it changed to showing historical images and things like that, until on a rainy day, water got into the underground power cables, which run for several hundred meters over a bridge, and obviously are designed in a way that you can't easily access. And as far as I know, it's still not working. Power is still the issue on anything electronic. Miriam working on shape-changing things, including things just like the student from years ago did to pull that one, and you know, furry ones that turn into cats and things like that. Miriam can draw. Anna can draw okay. That's me. but Miriam is really good. And she does sort of the sketching workshops at Kai and things like that. They've just got, I should give them a plug, they've just got to put a new book on sketching, the sketching for UI stuff. Yeah, I mean, this is an example of, I mean, different ones. I was looking back over my own things and things where I'd use pictures and how I'd use it. So this is PowerPoint mock-ups or envisionments of, this was trying to imagine what's like. So you've got somebody, an elderly person, or actually somebody who just needs help, and a helper at distance, hence the wiggly line. But how you might, rather than just taking over somebody's device, you know, do things where at one side you perhaps touch and the person at the other end, you know, you say that button, you know, so you want to see the person's device and share. You can't do any of this, you know, share somebody's, be able to help and guide them at a distance, rather like you would if you were doing it over the shoulder with someone. But anyway, you notice I'm sort of, you know, there's this mixture of pictures of it in context. Here, these are very screeny ones, but still we've got hands here trying to get a sense of what people are doing and stuff. So again, I've already said that, yes. We've got new methods and tools for existing interactions, and tools for new interactions we're interested in. Holding in context. This is a post, you know, those things where after the event you work out what you're doing. This is sort of us doing that. I'm not going to talk about the teaching side, but that is quite important. That was one of the drivers initially. But I'll talk about some investigations and then show another demo. I'm starting to slow down because I thought I had lots of time, but if I do that too much, I won't. But I'm still fine. So do we need new UX? There's an invisible rectangle there, isn't there? Anyway, do we need new UX tools? There's loads of tools out there, aren't there? And they're all different, aren't they? Apart from. So what's the problem if there's loads of tools out there already? There's a big, this guy, I forgot his name now, who does this survey every year. I think it's an annual survey of the tools that are used by UX designers. Massive, massive survey. Yeah, and this is, product designs. So less developer things. I don't know if they're coming hardly at all, architects, but these are most sort of design side, UX design side people. And then what tools do they use? It was Figma and Sketch and Adobe XD. And I think Miro will squeeze in here now if you went for the 2023 version. There's lots of people doing that. But what are people doing with their tools? Drawing wireframes. It's wireframes, 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 and more wireframes. No context. Now, if you're even if you're really experienced, I was actually talking about with my internet enabled Swiss Army knife, it's not, you can have a lot of imagination, you still think, but okay, let's assume you're really experienced, you've done your user research, you should, and you are thinking, every time you see one of those screens, you're thinking, even then we all need a little help, don't we? Right? But now imagine you're less experienced. That could be you're learning, or just that you're a professional, but you're just not that experienced and not that, used to the sort of things. You just don't have that. This is your scaffolding. There's no scaffolding. Now, it doesn't mean there's nothing out there that would do it, but certainly what's used does not do it. So that was one of our challenges. I'm not sure why that. Oh, I think that's just labeling them. Sorry, that's it. I was interested. Side quest thing, which is all about physical content. Talking to somebody at the BBC who was working on second screen devices with television, and happened to ask about, because this was some years ago, actually a few years ago now. I knew my mum couldn't look at the television, and even at a physical remote control with the same pair of glasses. Take one pair of glasses off, another pair of glasses on. Menu. There's a down button, even if you press down, even if you know what to do. So there's an issue about knowing what to do. You press down, you look up, and you can see the same thing. The screen hasn't changed, just like it didn't change for me. In fact, it did. It changed for you, didn't it? It didn't change for me because I was looking there. Yeah, really. So it's not just, not just a physical, I suppose the human context matters as well. So how can we move beyond the wireframe? So what I'm going to do is, yes, I'll do the building then. We also did a series of workshops with people because we had ideas ourselves, sort of things. On the prototype, we used the FIS prototype one I showed you earlier, and another one I'm going to show you in a minute. We did these before the workshops, but we didn't use them as prompts until late in the workshops. What we tried to do was have as much as possible tabula rasa and then say what you think of these, rather than do you think this is a good idea? Yes, of course we think it's a good idea. Yes. So it wasn't, although happily for us, quite a lot of things that we were driving us came in. Some of the things that were on our wish lists came up, and then a few things that we hadn't thought of, which is great as well. So, so we both ran some online workshops during COVID times. We've run a Kai workshop on this at Kai 22. The analysis we only just finished and trying to get published now. Just thing. And then we went, well, it wasn't then we went on to build things. I said the interaction was more complicated than that. We built prototypes first, but we tried to run the workshops so that we got a little bit of this sort of formative evaluation, but also tried to get as much things. I will mention in a bit some of the things that the extra new bits that came along, but I'll skip that because I want to show you some of the other prototype things. So I've shown you the FIS prototype, which was originally done thinking, its orientation, it came from these video workshops, but we realized for some of the things, sort of things that Anna was doing with physical prototypes, these are the kind of tools you might want for new kinds of styles, about how you might prototype them. Anna now works with smell a lot. I think we need some new prototype ideas for the smell. It's not easy to do that without stuff. So this designs, how do we do some storyboard designs with context, but also linking into these wireframes? So there's a couple of things we tried. So one is, I could try this tinkering at the edges. So this is, there's a story to this. I was teaching high fidelity prototyping in Birmingham University a few years ago, and didn't realize that some of the professional tools, or it wasn't obvious that they had free levels that would do the things we needed. So I thought I'm gonna have to make one myself. So I built a Figma-like thing. But it's very useful. So now I've got a Figma-like thing. It's amazing what you can do in a week when you think you're going to teach at the end of it, and then realize I didn't need to do this after all. So it's a good voice. And it's got a gallery full of things like menus and stuff that you could pull in and do that sort of screen building stuff. It's called it. But one of the things we did was just then add to the gallery and do some things that, instead of having a screen, if you want to do quick, if you're not good at sketching like me, homunculi, tables, chairs, and stuff like that. So this is just taking what would be just like a screen, or you can imagine doing that as a set of pre-built things for using in PowerPoint or whatever. So there's things you could do to tinker at the edges to make it easier to do that storyboarding that Miriam does with such panache, instantly and magically, but some of us will struggle a bit more with. But we also then try to say, what we like to try and connect up the sort of screen side of things with the contextual side. And so this then, we'll move back into demo mode. I'll get the mouse. There's no sound on this. You don't need to change things. That's right, I just realized. So I'm just trying to find my mouse. Can you see my mouse?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Close. I don't think it would interfere. So this is a scenario. So what this is a fixed scenario. It's not wireframing. You can connect it to wireframe. The right-hand side is think of wireframe. Apart from, we're going to deal with multiple kinds of screens, which is interesting. In a project, usually, and most of the wireframes, you're only allowed one kind at a time. But anyway, we're going to have multiple kinds of screens. So here, actually, one of the ones my students had when in Birmingham, actually, again, before I was in Swansea, doing an internet fridge. Yet another internet fridge, I know. But anyway, an internet fridge, big on the door, struggling to be able to use the tools to do this, because they were using Figma, I think it was. And they couldn't, they just did screen designs. With two projects. One for the script fridge, one for the phone. Or sort of sub-projects. I don't know how it's organized, but they was, doing it. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to edit my URL, because there's a nice version that I've got some of Miriam's pictures in as well. So you don't have to suffer all of mine. This one has some of Miriam's in. Okay. So yes, that's you can see the Miriam picture. That one is me, but done using PowerPoint. I'll just explain. So that's high-res computer scientist. That's high-res artist. And you can just step through the science. So we'll just step through it. You're at your home. You can look on the fridge and see what you've got. We'll assume the tech for this has been managed with, NFC devices and that kind of stuff. Let's not worry about that. Then I perhaps go to my armchair. I go and I choose what I want to have. I'm sitting there, do my shopping list of the week, fill it in, go to the supermarket. Quite similar mobile phone interface. But I'm in the supermarket and I'm buying the stuff and I'm ticking off then what I bought and what's gone into my pocket thing. And then I go back home, and in the evening I think, perhaps not sure, perhaps I just want to check that I had actually got something or whatever. There's a smart fridge app on my smart TV, of course. I really, it does actually, you know, there are some words there that are very, very small, but the text descriptions are, that would be good in audio, but anyway. And then I go to my smart TV and I've opened my MyFridge app and I go through it and have a peek at things and see how much I owe and things like that from my different tiers. But the other thing I'll just show you, which is fun, which is playful, not serious, but actually does, it's actually really cool. But if you look carefully at that screen, right, which was, it does actually change as the one. And if you look carefully, it's just being mapped into that. So you can actually see, you can have multiple devices. Oh, I haven't added the occlusion yet. So this, if you added this as a device, the screen unfortunately would overlap. You're not supposed to tell people that, are you, in demos? Oh, yeah. Okay. And it all works wonderfully. It's perfect. It's lots of to do. But anyway, so what you're trying, this isn't the be all end all design, but what you're doing is trying to get this feeling for what it would be like to actually create tools that really encourage people to think about where something's happening, who it's happening to, while it's being done, and to link the two, you know, ideally to live link the two. And also, by the way, another thing you'll notice here, which you could debate about and different things, but this is a mixed fidelity. I mean, obviously, just because it's using images, it's easy. It's not that difficult to do mixed fidelity. And of course, you often do want that. There's different bits that you actually want to talk about. And for all the reasons, you sometimes have a low fidelity thing in order to help people understand that's the tentative bit. This is the bit we're more sure of. Really quite important there. You can have a photograph there if you want as well. But I said it's not, because there's a bit of me that's quite proud of our tools and stuff like that. But actually also it is there. The crucial thing is to just get that sense. It's a technology probe to say, what would it be like to design things like this? Back to, oh, and now I really do, hello, back, sorry, I'm just trying to find my mouse again. It is, for a while, my mouse started getting bigger, which is what they always should do. And then they've stopped doing that again. I don't know why. There we are. Yeah. So again, just I'll step through the, oh yes, this behind the scenes, there's little descriptors of these and it generates the CSS transformation. And of course, there's a sort of table driven stuff and all the stuff. So it's all, you know, no, actually not over engineered actually, but engineered for extent for you know, a level of next stepness. So what next? So the workshop we have actually eventually done full analysis. It took a lot, you know, like it's like you get lots of data and it's hard to, so that is coming through. The senses beyond sight, you know, in one sense, actually, I think the pictures help that because in a cartoon, there's lots of ways of talking about smell and sounds and stuff. So I mean, sounds are certainly easy to add, but certainly thinking about what that would mean, and then at different levels of fidelity as well. I put the links to surface design because so many of these things actually interact with the surface design, I think, because we're looking at quite long time scales for some of these things. So like that internet fridge one was not about while you're interacting with the fridge. It was about what you do with the device, with the thing as a whole. So that there's a sort of an extra segue there into long-term interaction, which is another issue. We want that context, because that little inkling of how we might try and make some of that context easy. It's got to be easy for people, otherwise it's not going to happen. And in terms of when you start thinking about these things as well, you can, you know, just like when you do a cognitive walk around, you try to think about what's going on in the person's head. So you might want to add that kind of stuff, but also for all the same reasons, if you don't think about your UI early and about your users early, things go wrong later. If you don't get your data architecture right early, things go very wrong later. They go very wrong internally, but they also go very wrong for the user. And this is the exact time when you've got scenarios of actual use, not just use cases, which are usually about one moment, right? But scenarios. And we did this back in .com days. Actually, we did the wrong way around in a way. We took our marketing scenario, and then as our internal documentation, so it was an after the event thing, took the marketing scenario and said, this is what is happening in the architecture. as an explanation of the architecture. But I often thought, that's what we should have done to start with. So yeah, I'd really like to sort of have, and that did come out of some of the comments as well. People talked about that. Integration, though, was the other thing that lots of people mentioned. The lack of integration between the tools they use, and certainly live integration. But one of the issues we deal with are file systems have not changed since the 1970s. We cannot easily talk about meta information and relationship. This has come up in the heritage work as well, again and again. So it's not that you can't add things. If you're dealing in your closed world, you can do it. But there is no easy way to actually add rich meta information to talk about that this file is used by this file, this was generated by that. Provenance, all of this is a lit ad hack and it's not supported well. So I can see this comes up in so many contexts. And it was AI ... Well, there are things we could say about it, but let's not say. So it was interesting. It was an issue that people were bringing up, but we were doing our workshops pre the ChatGPT explosion. So it'd be really interesting if we redid them now, we'd probably get a completely different set of things. One I will mention, though, I mentioned the accommodation issue. Right? I think that's one of the things that we would probably get AI will do better than we will do, is pretending to be a user that isn't us. People think empathy is about sitting into somebody else's shoes and seeing the world through their eyes. That's not. That's egotism. Empathy is seeing the world as they see it, as they see it, not as you would see it in their shoes. Some of the most empathetic people I know are some of the people who find it hardest to naturally empathize, because they really do try to understand the other person. And actually, there are people who do it. It is really hard to do. It's really hard to understand that somebody especially thinks differently than you. And just about imagine physical, perceptual stuff like that. We can imagine the specs that would make you change and that. I think the AI will actually do that better. I sort of don't like to say that, but I think it will. And then maybe there's other things for you. So this is an open thing. Okay, that's it. Yes.
Thank you. We have time for a few questions. If there are remote questions, Jan can.
I'm all muted. Yeah.
So let's start with a local question, maybe. Oh, come on. Okay, Wendy.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it's a question or a comment, because it seems like, when I look at this, we talk about an intellectual user-oriented design. It's basically fundamental to how we go about doing design. And when I look at those things, I call them interaction snippets. There's a name for them. In the little book that I just gave you, you'll see some interaction snippets in there and so on. So what I think is and I have a little spiel that I give on what's wrong with wireframes. That's very much, so we're very much in sync in terms of how to think about these things. What I think is interesting, though, is that we're in a world in which, so when I talk to my students and my students talk to their bosses or other people in industry, there's a line that says they don't want innovation. They meaning the users who they normally have not actually talked to. So there's that. But the idea is that we should not be trying to do anything beyond a button or a wireframe or whatever, because that's what people know. That's what they expect. And if we do anything else, it'll make it harder for us to sell the product. And so I don't believe that, but I'm curious because I have seen on numerous occasions where you flip it around a little bit, give them something. You have what's called one trial learning, where you try using some tool, for example, with instrumental interaction, you try something and it's like, whoa, this is so much better. So people do. But there is this argument that we keep getting back from the students, and I'm curious how you respond to that, because I'm a deep believer in contextual design, and I'm curious how you manage.
Okay, so there's two things. So one is that pragmatics, and So I think that actually I didn't talk about the education side, but you know, one thing we can do, of course, is teach about these things, even though we know there will be barriers later, you know, because it's the sets, the mindsets we set in through that. So it's a bit like, although actually in consultancy practice, task analysis is used a lot. Even though it's a sort of bit of a dirty word in HCI nowadays, I know, but actually teaching that means it forces people to think about what people do, you know, so even if you never use
Sort
it.
of like this far on a thing where they should be.
Yeah, okay, yeah, but that's better than no far. It's just that there's things we teach, or when you learn to drive, you learn to do mirror signal maneuver. That's not what you do when you drive.
No.
But there are things. So I think there's some argument to the actual, it's interesting because the context-oriented prototype, if you look, the actual device screens were bog standard ones. So there it wasn't, you know, you can imagine having very novel interactions going on there. But in fact, those were really absolutely standard. The things you do in your wireframes, it wasn't not doing your standard wireframe, not doing standard buttons. It was more about, you know, but there is a cost, there is a design cost, although I think these things actually would be the sort of, well, as I explained, when I did this is more on the software architecture side, but what we used there was the scenarios we used in our marketing material, you know, and we then reused them as part, I mean, so it was a little bit, you know, we did actually, and it was more the documentation side, and I still feel, you know, ideally we would have done it the other way around, almost like started the scenario and worked down, you know, I mean, had those in your head, of course, but yeah, so some of these things work in that sense, but yeah, the radical stuff is more problematic, and this comes down to that thing which is hard, and I think it's probably even more hard would be, I think, the instrumental interactions. But however good it is, you know, and you know, I'll believe, you know, I'm sure we'll have debates, but I will believe that this is the best way to go. What we have to do as a designer is design paths, and so there's going to be commercial pressures that. So there's a different set of commercial pressures, which is about time to market, how much time you spend, which is a different set. But when we create something that's innovative, even if it's going to be massively better, we have to design the path. And I think that's, you know, and once we do it, sometimes it's hard to do that, but often it's actually, often when we think about it, it becomes quite trivial, isn't it? Or not so difficult to do. You know, parallel, you know, might have parallel methods in the interface or something like that. Yeah, so I think that would be, but the other side, I will just step back into the commercial pressures bit, because it is easy as well, as especially as educators in HCI, to sort of have this wonderful view. And actually, this idea of what is achievable, I mean, achievable in the context, within the budget. There's two words that I find really, really useful, which is desire and disaster. Right? Because when you do user testing, what you get is all the niggly little things that actually people could probably cope with anyway. Right? It's work, you know, it's not that you shouldn't fix them all. But what I really think is, what's the disaster? What's the things that's going to make this, you know, sometimes a lot of this is functional, it's crashes, it's things you can't do. What's going to make somebody give up using this? Well, that's number one. And
we talk about doing breakdowns.
Exactly, yeah. And then desire. What is it that makes somebody go, wow? And I know there's some things I've got where, and I don't always predict exactly where that wow moment is going to be. And people jaw drops. Yeah, and those are where you put your effort, desire and disaster. Not all the stuff we normally teach in UI, which is all the use testing, which is important. I know it is important. I'm not saying, but you know, but is the bit in between. But get rid of the real stoppers and get that wow. And once you got the wow, though, sometimes it's UI wow, and that's what Apple push. Well, no, it's not a UI wow. It's a design now for Apple. The UI is, but the but it's, you know, there's that design wow. But the other wow is a functional wow. It's the thing that you couldn't do before. It's rarely a usability wow. Yeah. Which is quite sobering as well. That's somebody who spent his life doing usability. So yes, a long answers to your questions, yes. Oh, we say
oh, there's a question online. Okay.
Anastasia, do you want to ask?
Yes,
Oh.
hi Alan, sorry,
Hi.
I couldn't make it today. Just
yeah,
a quick
are you
question.
feeling at all better or?
I am a bit better, but not that well
Yeah.
to join you, but I really enjoyed the talk. Thank you. So I had a question about an intriguing comment you had in your last slide that maybe AI could help us adopt more empathetic design strategies or empathetic designs. Can you tell
Yes.
us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I said, I mean, it comes from practical experience of knowing people who are, shall we say, pretty far on the autistic spectrum, who are like the person I know, you know, like, but a best present giver I know, I would say, you know, not something not him, but certainly would be somebody who wouldn't naturally have that empathy because they take time to explicitly understand the other person.
Mm.
You know, and there was a comedy show called The Rise and Fall of Reggie Perrin. That's right. And there was this doctor in his company. So there's a doctor, you know, the company doctor. And you go to the doctor and he'd say, I've been having these things. And it was things like seeing his mother keep having these images of his mother-in-law as a hippopotamus. And there was a variety of things. It was a sort of middle-aged, midlife crisis-y sort of, anyway, he goes to the doctor and he says, I've got this problem. Sometimes they're physical ones, but lots of them were to do with this one. And the doctor said, yeah, I know. I have exactly the same problem myself. Yeah. Do you know anything about it? No, I can't do that.
I see.
And if you've ever talked to a teenager and told them, I know what that feels like. Right?
Yeah.
This is the light disaster. But you don't know what, you know, I don't know what you feel like, you don't know what I feel like. But what we can do is try and understand how the other person feels, not how we would feel in their shoes. I think that's really important for interpersonal relationships. It's really important for politics and diplomacy. But there is an argument that the unhumanness can actually, not in all contexts, there are times when there's a difference between a counsellor and a friend.
It's
Not
almost
evidence.
more, yeah, okay. I think it's more objective interpretation of what you're feeling and what you want. Yeah, okay, I see.
So in a UI context, something like, you know, I said what it's like to have, and I can like just about imagine, and my accommodation is going now, so I now do have to sometimes take glasses on and off and swap them. But I could just about do physical and perceptual stuff. But when it comes to somebody who thinks differently, you know, that can be think differently in terms of opinions, but also understand what's it like to have brain fog.
I understand. No, that's excellent. Thank you very much.
I think, you know, I think we'll find these tools help us with that. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Camille, it's okay. It's a good mic.
Thank you for the talk, Alan. It was really nice. I was wondering when you were presenting the like designing in context, so where you would draw, for instance, the sketch of an app and something, but also draw the context it appears in. So is it something you did with students?
So we've not used this. It's what I've encouraged students to do on paper. As in, I've encouraged them to do that. They haven't always done it, even though you encourage them to do it. What we've not, you know, those prototypes of prototyping, prototypes of prototyping apps, we've not used them in anger except in the terms of the. We've done like, you know, like your second one, case study-ish things ourselves doing it, not the bit where we give it to other people. So these have not been used to get other people to do stuff, although something I'd like to do. And if anybody would like to, you know, work out, very happy to do the next stage would make it easier to sort of do multiple installs and stuff. And so people could actually do that properly.
Yeah, no,
So there was a follow-up.
yeah, the follow-up
Yeah, I'm
was,
not cried yet, so this is
no,
important. Yeah.
The actual question was, did you yourself or did you see other people do that and then decide to use less technology in the end? Because I was thinking, for example, situation you would design, I know you design an application, you just draw the screen of the application, and then at some point you draw the context. I don't know, you see that if it's in a social context, everybody's looking down on their own phone instead of sharing a moment or something. So in the end, you might decide, okay, that's a bad idea to do an app at all. And I feel like this, like taking context a bit more into context, into consideration, would sometime, maybe encourage you not to do what you envision in the first place. I was wondering if that's something you were thinking about.
And certainly, I mean, these books happen in parallel. I mean, one of the things although it was sort of an accident to the way it was put together, you know, the fact that you could do mixed levels of prototyping is actually really important as well. Because these, like Bill Buxton's obviously written a whole book about some sketching and important and others as well. These issues, the way in which different levels of thinking about stuff allow you to both. And I always find, let's get this right. One of my problems I sometimes find, and I've had this, and back in .comming days, struggling with this with the team there. People often do actually want to stop at the abstract, and sketches can be sometimes too abstract as well, but particularly this is true of descriptions and stuff. I usually find you do need to be quite concrete, but this is emotionally hard because it is actually hard to see that some of these things are problematic unless you hit a level of detail. So when I talked about the internet-enabled Swiss Army knife, I could quite happily talk about that. When I held it in my hand, I had to think about where the screen was. It was only when I got to detail doing the thing that I noticed where my thumb went, you know, and often we want to stop. Detailed design very early on, I think, is absolutely crucial. So long as you know what you're doing is not doing an early design. Now, so people talk about throwaway prototypes and because our brains are not wired for that abstractions. You know, we do need, and this is true. Now, what I do a lot in my head is, and I do it if I'm doing techie computer stuff and algorithms, I do it, I'm thinking UI, I do it in any domain, is I'm a born academic, I'm a born abstract thinker, I'm always doing things, but constantly have several, sometimes they're just in my head, very concrete examples. And concrete varies. If I'm doing abstract maths, then concrete might mean some weird algebra, you know, that isn't at a level below that. So it will vary on the kind of thing you're doing, what concrete means. But we often don't do things concretely enough to trigger the way our brains work and actually work on those things. And our imagination needs a level of precision. When you dream, you know, there is detail in those dreams. But what's emotionally hard is those concrete things have to be things to be thrown away. Now, sometimes it does mean they're always, sometimes they are good ideas, but to be able to, and what you're using them to is, and this is particularly important for architecture design. So those who are more software oriented, absolutely crucial for software architecture, because the software architecture will be used in lots of contexts. It's also true of a mobile application that's going to be used in lots of contexts, right? And so actually what I only showed you one scenario. I should have shown you lots, but they all need to be concrete enough. If I said somebody could use it at home, it's not going to do it, right? I have to show it much more concrete. For software architecture, having multiple, quite detailed ideas of things, really, really important. Otherwise, you know, you do not get it. But it's emotionally hard because you have to do it. You have to invest yourself fully into it, whilst knowing you're going to discard it. That is difficult.
Thank you. I think we can take one last question online.
There is a question from Helmut Reiter.
Yeah, thank you. Hello from Angoulême. Thank you very much for your presentation, first of all. My question goes to your idea to call it scenario, what I like very much.
Yeah.
But who says scenario is also to telling a story. And this puts me on that difficulty on creating, let's say, intuitive user interfaces. Because when, let's say, when I read a book, how do I not forget the many connections of the different, let's say, the different places or the different actors or so on. So one difficulty is always, and we see it a lot when people are confronted the first time of a system. So how can we, in your idea, go with this idea of scenario to build more intuitiveness or assure more intuitiveness?
I mean, again, I mean, whether it's, I like, yeah, saying story is good. I mean, they use scenario because it's our UX word, but yeah, the story is critical. We are good. We are storytellers. We're not, you know, thinking of all the possibilities is difficult to do. I mean, the intuitiveness is, I mean, again, it's interesting. So something like the scenario there, I was deliberately doing for various reasons. It was a long-term ones, which are often problematic to do. I think for the intuitiveness, it's going to be typically, I think, shorter term scale things. Again, there, I think, although it is difficult, I think, to be honest, I think the acting is far better for this than the looking. But the detail, which we were talking about earlier with the detail, I think the detail is really crucial. If the more, I think I'm sort of saying this. I mean, I'm looking around people who are much more empirical about these things than me. But I will declare, and I'll let people empirically prove me wrong as well. But I would declare that I think that the understanding that intuitive, what is intuitive, will require a substantial level of detail. And that detail thing, but detail in multiple senses. There's a sort of visual, tactual, you know, what it looks like type detail, but also the detail of the story that runs in. So how that, you know, who is the person, what is in their head, how they think. And in stories, we are good at seeing people's head. You know when somebody acts out of character. You know, it feels wrong, you know. And so the story bit is crucial, that bit that really makes the characters alive for you. But it is difficult, and particularly that when we talk intuitive, there are some things that perhaps that are fundamentally human. But we were talking, the affordances bit came up earlier. If you know your sort of Gibson affordances, it's about what things, you know, and it's the idea that, you know, you look at a rock and you don't have to think this is a throwable rock. You just know it's throwable. Well, you know, that in the sort of physical, you know, cave world, should we say, Neolithic world, you know that. In our world, what we know and how we process it is critical to the affordance something. Something only is intuitive if we have certain sets of mental attitudes. So I think, again, we have to be really careful with our ideas intuitive. But again, I think the detail helps. It helps us to think into somebody else's head as well as perhaps, but, you know, it is one of those ones where then the AI may help. And also this is where, you know, and I'll let Wendy, you know, you can say talking to people, really going out and really talking to, because we will get that wrong. I think we will get intuitive wrong because it is, you know, except at the very mechanical levels. There are levels where I think we share as human beings through our physicality, but what we know, what we experienced, really influences that as well. So yeah, very lots of detail. I like detail, but it's so hard to throw it away. Yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And of course, Alan is here for, yeah, come and talk to him. And thank you to the people who join remotely as well.
Oh, and our technical.
And Jan for making this all happen. Thank you.
No, there's a lot in there. Oh, Joel was there. I just saw Joel.
Hiya, and I would not have
Hello.
missed your talk. Hello.
I just saw you in the chat. In the chat, I could see you in the chat. You must have said your name, so you must have said something earlier.